So I think it was three of them, right, that won the Nobel Prize. All of them for, AI and neural networks related stuff, but it was three of them. And there were people on Google saying, "Oh yeah, they work for Google. He was my supervisor. They're ex-Googlers. Blah 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 blah." If the Google had all that brain power, why is Google so far behind in AI? Like, we've had this conversation before on chat, and you're welcome to disagree with me in the chat, but I think we all came to the conclusion that, like, if you were to look at LLMs and Gen AI, Google's like in 5th place, right? Is anybody excited about Gemini? How many times have you heard people talk about Gemini? We're usually talking about OpenAI, Anthropic, Llama, right? You had all this brain power and you're in 5th place? That's a people problem. That's an ivory tower problem, right? What good is having all these Nobel Prize winners if you're in 5th place? I have other thoughts about how that happens too, because I saw a little bit of this at IBM. But how many Nobel Prize winners does OpenAI have? Now, don't get me wrong. I think eventually they will have some, right? I mean, I don't know if it's going to be Sam Altman, but eventually OpenAI, somebody significant at OpenAI will win the Nobel Prize. That's 100% guaranteed, right? But you had all that brain power and you're in 5th place in Gen AI? It's embarrassing. What do you guys think about that? How many Nobel Prize winners does Anthropic have? Anthropic basically came out of nowhere and ate Google's lunch. So did OpenAI. I mean, OpenAI didn't kind of come out of nowhere, right? But who was Anthropic 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Right? So that's the part that kind of gets me too, because I saw, I'll admit I kind of added to that commentary because to me it's like embarrassing. Like, why would you advertise that? But you had all that brain power and you're 5th place in Gen AI? I don't know. I don't know if I'm too proud of that. Let me know what you guys think. I get it, I'm sharing fighting words. I get it. But, what do you guys think? Yassine says, I agree with you that Gemini is very late to the race of LLM and Gen AI, but in defense of Google, it has some other projects where it excels. Other companies, I think, are specialized to that field. Maybe, Yassine. I'm like 90% on board with what you're saying. Like, I get what you're saying, right? Like, Anthropic only does Gen AI, so, that is an inherent advantage. I get that. But here's two thoughts come to mind, though, Yassine. One, what are some of those other projects where Google excels? I know. You guys are thinking, well, I really like Gmail. I really like Google Drive. Whatever, pick your product. But if we're being honest with each other, the answer is they excel at AdWords and AdSense, right? They excel as an advertising company. That's what's keeping the lights on at Google. I mean, yes, they kind of sort of have a cloud service you pay for, and some non-zero population out there pays for Google Drive, and YouTube Premium generates some revenue. But they're an advertising company. That's what they are. Right? That's what they do. So Yeah, okay, if they specialize in that, okay, that's great, but that means you've taken your eye off the ball, right? You're not an innovative company anymore, right? And that's why that's why you got your lunch money stolen by OpenAI, because you fell asleep at the wheel, right? Trust me, it ain't YouTube Premium that's keeping Google employees with free lunch and employed, right? And that's not what's paying the bills at Google. So, yeah, I agree with you. They have other projects where they excel, but they're not innovative. They're not cutting edge. They're not Gen AI. I mean, even with Gemini, they're only doing like a middling job. I mean, one of the things I always laugh at, guys, and I want you guys to keep an eye on this because I see this. I've been seeing this for the last 3 months, maybe longer, since Google's last like big, release event or whatever, those big events that they broadcast. Google is doing the world's dumbest thing. If you look at any time they talk about Gemini with their executives or the promotions or whatever, they always talk about context. Oh, we're going to support, at the release, we're going to support, what was it? 2 terabytes of context. Oh, we have the biggest context out there. We're going to increase the Who cares? Who cares? Competing on context is like expecting to win a Olympic gold medal in swimming because you have the best hair. Like, who cares about context? Do you know how much 2 terabytes of context is? It's like multiple encyclopedias. No, the average person is not going to care about that. The average company is not going to care about that. So to me, Gemini, it's a trash product that they're propping up with smoke and mirrors. Probably because they're getting some questions from their stakeholders. Why doesn't Google have a Gen AI product? Right? Google kind of has to put something out there, right? Like they're kind of forced to. Doesn't make it any good, right? So think about that. And somebody else tell me, what do you think Google excels at? Because I think it's advertising. Google is an excellent advertising technology company. But that doesn't make you a Gen AI company. It doesn't make you innovative, right? Second thing, and here's where I'm relating it back to AI, to IBM. So one of the things I noticed at IBM, and I'm positive also happens at Google, is that you end up hiring all these PhDs, all these academics, and it sounds great. Hey, we got these great stable of people who wrote these amazing papers, blah, blah, blah. But they're academics. They're not practitioners. They've never had their hands at the keyboard, right? They've always been academics. So in these big companies, they end up in these like think tanks, like these internal think tanks or these labs that these companies create. IBM is infamous for this, right? IBM has labs all over the world filled with these smart PhDs, right? Smart people who've never written a line of code in their lives, right? So you end up building all this brain power and all this stuff, and they end up writing these long, ridiculous papers about what the future is going to be like, right? Because here's the thing about PhDs. Every one of these PhDs thinks they're some sort of futurist that can see the world and where we're going. And, oh yeah, I can't prove it today, but I'll prove it to you in 75 years, right? That's what happens at these big companies, right? Like they go out and like rush out for these PhDs without really knowing like what to do with them or really thinking if they should be doing that, right? Because you're hiring a PhD, not a practitioner. So now you have this whole lab full of PhDs that are telling you what to do in 75 years. Is that good? Is that bad? IBM's been doing this for, 40 years? Like since the 80s? Do you consider IBM to be a cutting edge, innovative company? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what happens, right? You end up with these labs full of people, expensive people, by the way, who aren't practitioners. They all think they're futurists. They all think in theoretics. They don't think in things that like you can do today. Right? So I saw that a lot at IBM. The worst conference I ever went to. Oh my gosh, guys. I was working for this consulting firm, a terrible consulting firm. But we were an IBM, like, super duper deluxe partner, which means that we basically all worked under the umbrella for IBM, blah, blah, blah. So we went to this internal team conference. It was in Chicago in the middle of winter. It was a ridiculous event. And the opening keynote for the conference was one of these one of these lab people from IBM, one of these PhDs. And he gave the world's most boring talk. I got 0 out of it. Because, we were an audience of consultants, right? So we're people out there in the field, right? Like I'm the boots on the ground, and I've got this theoretical guy who can't write code to save his life talking about what's going to happen in the next 80 years. Like, that's just not beneficial to billing clients today, building solutions today, right? So that's why I'm saying this, because I've seen this happen. And it 100% happens at Google. Google has these same labs, right? So keep that in mind, guys, that these companies become these big bloated entities who feel smart, but execution-wise, they're very weak. So I think that's part. I think that plays into our discussion right now, right? You had all these PhDs who are, okay, that's great, but they're not talking to you about how you can do something today. OpenAI is doing something today. Anthropic is doing something today. That's what I think. Anyways, give me some feedback there if you think differently.